Hi, I'm Beth from Restyled Pieces Boutique. Welcome back to my channel. I have purchased an antique sideboard. It's really cool, really unique, but I got the idea in my head. I had inspiration from other furniture artists on Instagram. Got it in my head to strip it all the way down to bare wood and then paint wash it. And oh my gosh, those pieces are so gorgeous that I see that people have done that. But I'm telling you, at this point in the video, when I am recording this intro, I have only done the stripping and a little bit of sanding and never again. And I'm just in a little bit of anticipation to see if it's really going to turn out the way I expect or if I'm going to have to paint it. So let's see together and watch this video if you want to find out. So first things first, I took this mirror off the back and I wanted to see what the date was, see if I could find the date. And a lot of times on these antique pieces, if you take the back off and you look at the back of the mirror, there will be a stamp on the back of the mirror where it shows you what the date is. So I need to replace that backing anyway and clean everything up. And of course, I'm going to strip this piece. And so I'm just taking the back off to see what I find. And unfortunately, there's no date in the back. I have searched the back of the piece, under the drawers, inside and out. I couldn't find anything. So let's just move on to cleaning this piece. I am cleaning this piece by vacuuming it out first. I like to get all the dust and things out. And then I've decided, before I go any further, I think I'll try to get all of the glass out and the fretwork, so that I can strip this piece thoroughly and not have to work around those things. So I have sped this up for the sake of time, but I just gently go through and use my painter's tool to pry each of those nails. They're held on by tiny nails. And so I just pry that off gently and I pull out any nails that I can find with my pliers that don't come out really well. And then success, I got it out. So now I'm moving on to one of the two bigger side cabinets, and they only had trim on each side, so I guess that's all that was necessary. And I'm trying to get the glass out after I get the trim out, but for some reason, I can't get it out. I've pushed, I've pulled, I don't want to break it, so I'm trying to be gentle with it. But I'm just moving it around, pushing and pulling, going up and down, side to side. That is not coming out. I worked on this for probably, 10 minutes trying to use it move it in different angles and different ways. It was just not coming out. I think it was built into the front side of the frame. So I'm just going to have to tape around that and see if I can work around that glass. The old casters that were on this piece were dirty. One of them was broken and they weren't working very well. So I'm just going to remove them with my painter's tool and my hammer. And they just pop right out. And then I'm using a little pick to go into the little corners of the base of it so I can get the little insert out. And now that I got those pieces all out, I'm going to use my Pure Power by Farmhouse Paint. It's a very good cleaner and degreaser. It gets the dirt, the wax, the grime off this piece so I can strip it and sand it and not have anything interfere. This was definitely not the original hardware, and one of them was missing a back on it. So I just got rid of those. I got rid of the old keyhole covers. And here I'm taking out the mirror. So there are little pieces that secure the mirror in so that after you put the back on, it won't move around. So I just took those out, and I'll replace those when I get everything cleaned up and stripped and finished. And here I'm just rinsing my piece with some water, spraying it with water and rinsing off any residue that might be on it. I'm taking off these keyhole finger pulls. They're a combination keyhole cover and a finger pull on the doors. And now it's time to strip. I'm using my chemical resistant gloves, long sleeves, jeans, all of that, so I can be safe. I'm using clean strip to strip this entire piece. I am starting with the top of it. So I just put some in a little metal bowl, use an old brush that cheap brush that I'm just gonna throw away afterwards. I got the finish off. Now I'm just rinsing it with water, and look what happens. It was the worst thing. I knew this piece was a little weak, but check it out right here. Here we go, here we go. Oh my gosh, I couldn't believe it. And I'm like, okay, well, I'll just fix that later. I'm gonna keep moving on, and we'll move on to the next step and get that fixed at another time. When stripping, you want to make sure you keep that area wet. So during the 15 minutes of wait time, if I see that little areas are drying out, I'll just dip my brush in the stripper. It's kind of like a gel, and I'll spread that on in those areas and go over it again to make sure it stays wet. So after the 15 minutes, I take my scraper and I just scrape off that finish. There really wasn't a lot of goo and finish on it. So, but it took off everything fairly well, and then I will rinse it and wait for it to dry and sand. And oh my goodness, will I sand forever and ever. Is it worth it? I don't know. At this point, I'm questioning my life choices and if it's really going to be worth it or not. So after I got that top piece and the drawers stripped, I started with the top of the actual piece itself, and I put just a party tablecloth or cheap tablecloths that you get at Walmart or Dollar General or wherever. I put it over the bottom because I do have those glasses, the curved glass on each side that I'm trying to protect and not get stripper all over it. Already you can see a difference. This is before and this is after stripping, and it dries out. So looking really good. So I'm taping up both sides with some wide frog tape of the glass on each side of the piece, because I'm going to be stripping those frames around the glass, and I do not want to get any stripper on there. So I put it on there, and then while I was waiting, the other piece had dried out. And so I'm just sanding and sanding and sanding my life away. These Surf Prep 3x5 Ray sponges work so well for sanding into those details and around curves. And so it's looking a lot better. And I'm hoping at this point it will look a lot better after I actually get to paint wash it and top coat it. Here I'm just sanding the drawers after they've been stripped, and I'm also cleaning up some of the stain and things that got on the outsides of the drawers, so they're looking pretty good. And here I'm moving on to the top, and I love this progression, how you can just see it get lighter and lighter as you go along. And here I'm using a 120 grit, and then I went through and changed to my 180 grit, so it would be a lot smoother and be ready for that paint wash. And I could have made you watch for days and days because that's how long it took me to strip the inside, the outside, and to rinse the inside and outside and scrape it and all of that on this piece. So instead, I'm just skipping kind of over to the sanding part because it's a little more satisfying to see that darker wood get lighter. And you can see in the corners and places I have some work to do. That's where my sander wouldn't get to, so I have to do some hand sanding on those areas. And I have my headphones in because it's a long few days and I'm listening to some rock music. 80s rock is my favorite. Again, questioning my life choices here. Is this going to be worth it? And while I can see the lightness coming out, there's still so far to go at this point. And I have come a long way, but there's a lot to do. And I just seeing some of these pieces get lighter and look better is the only thing that keeps me going at this point. I'm using this little squishy handheld sanding tool. It's called a gator. It's a great tool. You can put little pieces of sandpaper on the end in different grits and just go into those little details. I also saw that the bottom looked a little ugly and I just wanted to tone down some of that old stain that had splashed from the people before, whoever had stained it. And so I like to have it a little more cleaned up than that. So I have these sanding grips. This is a set of rubber sanding grips and they come in different like triangles and circles and concave and convex, and you can wrap your sandpaper around there. And that's when I got to the hand sanding of sanding the corners, the edges, the seams, so that I could try to get all of that finish off. These are great tools for hand sanding. I'm so glad that I purchased these, and you can find them in my Amazon shop. All the things that I use in this project is listed below in the description. You have to rotate your piece of sandpaper frequently and then get a new piece when that one wears out. So always check that when you're using those rubber sanding grips. So now I'm just going over the whole entire piece with a 180. I've got it all sanded down. Thank goodness. This took a lot longer and was a lot slower than what I showed you, obviously. But I'm just getting it all sanded down to 180. I am so happy at this point that this part of the process is over. And I'm very excited to see the next steps. But before I get to the next step of paint washing, I need to repair that break in the top of the mirror. So what I'm doing here is I'm making sure that I get it all evened up and put in the right place. I'm using my Titebond wood glue, putting a layer of glue on that piece. Then I'm going to be putting some sawdust into those crevices. To fill the crevices with the glue, I just mix it together and press it together with my hands, and then I'll let it dry and I'll sand it, and hopefully it will camouflage and stay together well after it dries. So I will clamp this and then it will dry overnight, and then I will be able to sand all of that smooth. I did let that dry overnight. So I'm taking this backing, Luan board, I think it's called, or backing board, and just cutting a piece to put on the back to secure it even further. And so that works. It was missing a support for the drawer. So I need to cut one of those the same size as the support on the other side and install that. And the safety lock got stuck here when my sander, or when my saw goes down, my miter saw. So I couldn't bring it up. So my husband was in the garage and he unhooked it for me. I wasn't excited about reaching back there and doing that myself. So I installed the support with my brad nailer. So that's done. And now I'm going to be moving on to sanding the finish off of this fretwork. So it's very delicate. I'm a little worried about doing it with my sander, but I'm going slowly and gently. Now I'm speeding it up here so it doesn't look like I'm moving very slowly, but I'm moving slowly and gently and making sure that I don't rip off any pieces of that fretwork. So now I'm in the sanding mode, so I turned this over before I put the board on it, and I'm just sanding off all of that sawdust and glue, and I'm using my rubber contour sanding tools to get in those little crevices. It looks pretty good, it feels pretty strong, so I'm pretty happy about it, especially after I paint wash. A lot of this will just blend in together. So can you see the line a little bit? Yes, you can. But like I said, after the paint wash, it'll all blend in together and you'll never notice. So I'm using a hybrid beige from Farmhouse Evolution Paint and Fusion's Algonquin. Algonquin is a very popular wash among furniture refinishers. And I wanted it just a tiny bit lighter, so I'm putting quite a bit, and I really didn't measure. I put a lot of Algonquin and just a little bit of the hybrid beige to give it a little lighter color. Together, these two paints made 4 ounces of paint. So after I get my water in there and I mix it up, so I have 4 ounces of paint right there. You can see at the bottom, and then I'm filling it up to the 20 ounce. I mixed it up a little and I decided I want to go up to the 24 ounces. So 4 ounces of paint, 20 ounces of water in my paint wash. So if you're a ratio person, that is 1 part of paint and 6 parts of water, I believe. I don't know. I'm not the best math person, but I think that's correct. So I'm using one of my nice brushes. It is water-based, of course, because it's water-based paints and it's water. And so I'm just spreading that on my top, and then I'll let it sit for maybe a minute or so, and then I'll wipe it off with my blue shop towels. Each step, wiping off the top, you can still see it's got a little bit of haze or color or something. But once that dries, it'll look even better. And then once I top coat, that looks even better. So I'm just going through and doing the whole piece, paint washing the inside, the outside, and also the top mirror frame. Now that the piece itself is paint washed, I'm moving on to the shelves and the mirror frame and the drawers. Oh, and this beautiful fretwork. Also want to remember to be gentle with the fretwork. When you're wiping off the paint wash with your blue shop towels, you want to make sure that you turn them around, fold them inside out and things every so often, because you don't want them to be saturated with the paint wash, because you're just going to be spreading it around and not wiping it off. I'm so glad I kept my old workbench. It's so nice to have two workspaces that I can move things around, and I have plenty of room to get my projects completed. Now I let it dry overnight. I gave it a light sanding with a 400, and I'm top coating. This was exciting to me because I wasn't sure if I wanted to use some brown glaze and kind of deepen the color and give it more dimension, or if the top coat would do it. So a friend of mine just told me, well, just do one coat of top coat and then see what you think. And you can always glaze over the top coat, which is my preferred method as well. So I did, and it was looking really good. And I was excited by the dimension and the deepening of that nice light natural color. Here I am using a matte finish. It's called Flat. It is from General Finishes High Performance. It's a flat finish, which makes it more matte of a finish. I didn't want anything too shiny because it is an antique and it's in its natural state. It's looking so good. Even though I have several things I still need to do to it, put in shells, put in fretwork, put in the glass, cut the trim for around the glass pieces. So lots to do still, but it's exciting to be able to pull that tape off and see progress. So here is where I'm cutting some trim. I actually bought new trim at Tiny Trim area in my Home Depot. Has this really small trim. I glazed it with some brown to make it just a tiny bit darker so it would match better, match the finish on the piece a little better. I cut my pieces and sweating and freaking out, and inside I am stapling that at an angle to try to stay away from the glass. And I'm doing the same thing here with the glass behind the fretwork. So, little story here. The big curved glasses went fine. I got all of the staples in there, or all of the brads in there, using my brad nailer. I got 3 of the 4 sides of this smaller glass in there fine. When I got to the very last one on the corner, it cracked a little bit in the corner, which really bothered me, but I thought, well, a tiny little crack's not that big a deal. Oh, but then when I wasn't running my camera, I was putting in a keyhole cover, and I put my knee against the glass, not thinking about it, and the whole glass shattered. So I did have to replace this glass. We actually got it in 2 days' time at a local glass shop. It was only $11.90, which I was surprised about. So I did have to replace that glass. So here I am putting in the new feet. I'm just hammering in the
first part of the hardware, and then I'm hammering lightly into that part with my casters. So my husband came out so we could flip this over and see my casters in action. So now I'm putting the mirror on top, reinstalling that. And then I'm not going to show you the hardware and all the little details because I want to save that for the end. I will be showing you next the before and the after. Here's the before, the brown antique sideboard, and here is the after. Was it worth it? Judge for yourself, but I think it was completely worth it. Will I do it again? Not so sure.
So I'm wondering, did it turn out the way you thought? Thanks for joining me today, and if you'd like to subscribe to my channel, just hit that subscribe button down there and you'll be notified when new videos come out. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.